Once again, I'm Spencer Krum, this is Lisa,
Oh.
and we're joined by Matt Klein from Lyft, who's of course the primary author of Envoy, which is the main driver of what Istio is, right? And what we're doing here for anybody who's just joining the stream is this is sort of a celebration Twitch stream. It's running all day, and the idea is just to celebrate the Istio 1.0 release, which admittedly was 17 days ago, but we bought cake today. So we're celebrating today.
Yeah, we didn't buy the cake 17 days ago. But yeah, sorry about that. I just assumed everyone had been with us for every minute of this stream. And we've been super excited about having Matt on all day, so we've been kind of teasing it. But Matt, so first of all, a couple of things. I follow you on Twitter, and you're hilarious. And so I've been... Yeah, no, I mean, I've been encouraged, people like, well, just, try to get him to do a rant. He's famous for his rants. If you can get him to do a rant, here's some topics, discuss. And so I'm like, all right, we'll see. But also, first of all, congratulations to your wife on the PhD. That's incredible. And also your somewhat newborn baby, probably in that order of degrees of difficulty, maybe. I don't know. The PhD looked really, really amazing. So all good things happening in your house. And then for you, so why don't you, first of all, just kind of give the high-level overview, Istio and how it fits in with, Envoy and how it fits in with Istio.
Sure, great. Thanks for having me. This is super exciting to see Istio go 1.0. It's been a pretty long road. They've done a lot of hard work, so it's quite amazing to see what's been accomplished. So Envoy is obviously the data plane proxy that sits beneath Istio. And like I like to explain, the service mesh architecture is composed of two different pieces. There's the data plane. So that's the piece that's touching every packet. It's doing filtering, it's emitting stats, logging, and tracing. And then there's the control plane, and the control plane is the orchestration piece that is taking all of the individual data planes or all of the individual proxies and stitching them together into a larger system. So that's going to be figuring out how to integrate service discovery with Kubernetes or some other backend system, how to take user configuration, how to take ACLs, how to actually take that and stitch it together into a configuration that multiple envoys or multiple data planes can actually act on. So from the Istio perspective, it's been fantastic that Istio has taken Envoy as its default data plane. It's been great to see that grow. From the Envoy perspective, at this point, we've had such spectacular community growth that Envoy is now used in a whole variety of different systems. So we have a bunch of products being built on top of Envoy. We have a bunch of different control plane systems, Istio being one. So yeah, just super excited to see all of the large community growth and very, very happy to be here.
So just to be clear, because we've thrown out a lot of names today, and so I just kind of want, for context, maybe you could kind of talk about the state of proxies. So there's Envoy, but there was also Nginx and Linkerd and kind of, what the environment, what the ecosystem sort of looks like.
Sure. Yeah, I think that the proxy space, if you look back 3 or 4 years ago, was somewhat stagnant, at least in the software proxy space. Of course, there's hardware load balancers and hardware proxies and different cloud offerings. But in the software space, there was the market leaders, effectively Nginx and AJ Proxy, and it had been that way for probably the last five or 10 plus years. So there hadn't been very much movement within the software proxy space. And then about 3 years ago, we started Envoy development at the same time. I think the folks over at Buoyant were developing Linkerd, and obviously there's a couple of other proxies out there. There's Traffic, and there's a bunch of different ones. So I think in the last 3 or 4 years, it's been very exciting. There's been a resurgence in software proxy development, and I think the main reason for that is that we're increasingly moving, into these more dynamic architectures, so things like containers as a service or functions as a service. And these architectures tend to be highly volatile, and by volatile I mean things come and go. So we have things that are failing, we have things that are auto scaling, so the topology is always changing. And historically, the way that proxies like AJ Proxy and Nginx have been deployed is they've effectively had to use fixed configuration files. And a lot of the newer proxies, including Envoy, they're focusing more on a API-driven configuration. So that allows the proxy to be configured by a central control plane like Istio, and then used to manage a auto-scaling infrastructure or an infrastructure that is frequently changing. So I think that's the primary reason. I think on top of that, we've seen a increasing interest in in-depth observability. So those are things, again, like stats logging and tracing, a lot of API-driven approaches. And I think, again, these are areas that the newer proxies or the proxies that have been developed over the last couple of years have definitely been focusing on. So I'm obviously biased, of course, and I think Envoy is the best solution. That's not surprising, but it's been very exciting to see the resurgence in this space, and I think competition is great for everyone.
So why did they rebranded Conduit to Linkerd? Is that right?
I believe so. So I think, yes. So Buoyant makes Linkerd. That was their original project, and they started on a new service mesh project called Conduit. And I think now they are calling that Linkerd 2.0. So that's kind of they have two different solutions under the Linkerd brand.
Okay, all right. I think I was at the Conduit Linkerd party at Austin, and it was like, wait, I thought that name was going away, and then it was all over the walls and things.
So Matt, you have I definitely have watched your talks. Both, I think there's a really good Matt Klein, for anybody who's watching. There's a really good Matt talk about like why Envoy in the first place, and then there's a deep dive talk you did at KubeCon in Denmark. That was basically like this is kind of the internals of Envoy and why and how and stuff. And I definitely felt like you didn't have as much time, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to like maybe tell us one thing that didn't make it in that talk in Denmark that you wish you'd had the ability to throw it in, because it's a very low key audience here. Everyone's just chatting anyways.
Yeah, wow, that's a tough one. I would have to think about that.
It's okay. I can come back to that one. I got more questions for sure.
Yeah, let's come back to that.
Okay, so the basic question that always comes to me whenever I'm trying to pitch, the sidecar model, right? And it comes down to what you were doing at Lyft, right? Like, so this idea that the app's going to talk to a proxy that's going to talk to a proxy that's going to talk to the other app seems wasteful and expensive. Yep. Like, what's the standard argument against that makes that waste justifiable?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's the most common feedback or the most common question that I get, and it's a multifaceted answer. I think that first, from a performance perspective, Envoy has had a lot of performance tuning. There's obviously a lot more that we can do. There are some people that are working on some pretty fantastic kernel work that I think will take the the Envoy sidecar overhead to almost zero over kind of what you would have from a process built-in library. So I would look for that work that's coming out of the folks working on Cilium. And I think there's a continued march towards making the performance delta I think there's going to be a continued march towards making that performance delta almost zero. What I would say at a higher level, though, is that, or at least how I describe the situation is, I think that unless people are literally working on high-speed trading, so if you're running a high-speed trading system where you need trades to happen in single or double-digit microseconds over someone else, then I can completely believe that the sidecar performance overhead probably are going to be too high. But I think for the great majority of customers, if you look at the developer productivity benefits that you get from co-locating a bunch of functionality within the sidecar, so again, that would be advanced load balancing, circuit breaking, retries, timeouts. That would be things like advanced observability around stats logging and tracing, all types of different protocols, Lua scripting that was shown before. These are things that if you were to implement them in each individual application, it would just be hugely costly. So I think in the industry we don't do a good job of kind of determining what I would call total cost of ownership, and that's across both developer productivity as well as infra costs. And I think for the vast majority of organizations, the productivity gains that you get versus the fact that you might, see somewhere between 500 microseconds and 1 millisecond per sidecar hop, I don't think that most organizations really will.
Yeah, you're saying notice. That if that's the problem, congratulations.
Right,
there's
exactly.
Other problems to work on first.
Right. That's a great problem to have, and then we can look at very advanced solutions. One thing that I would point out very quickly, and which is completely counterintuitive, but I've been told this multiple times, is that when you pair Envoy or a fast sidecar proxy with certain applications, particularly applications that use a large amount of garbage collection, so if that's something like Java or Python or something else, that just by offloading a bunch of the networking, a bunch of the buffer management to the sidecar and avoiding garbage collection less in the applications, people actually see their applications run faster.
Wow.
So that's completely counterintuitive, but you will hear that multiple times.
That's the lightning talk I'd like to see. Somebody just show up, go up, show 5 slides, make everybody confused and get off. So at Lyft, it sounds like you've basically deployed Envoy as a sidecar most places in your kind of backend. And then what does that look like? Does that look like one VM has one sidecar and one copy of the app, or is there an end-to-end? What's the...
Yep. Yeah, so we run Envoy at Lyft at both the edge, so we use it as our edge termination proxy, and we also run it as our sidecar quote service mesh proxy. So historically, Lyft's architecture was before containers, so we have historically run services on virtual machines, and we use SaltStack. And so that's how our legacy infrastructure works. So it's one application, one Envoy per VM.
Yeah.
We are undergoing our Kubernetes migration right now. So, and what we're doing internally will look very much like what Istio is doing. So it's one Envoy per pod. So, we're keeping that one Envoy per application instance model, even as we move towards Kubernetes.
Right.
But now that Istio 1.0 is out, are you planning on consuming Istio at Lyft?
It's very complicated, mainly because we obviously developed Envoy. So we have, at this point, almost 3 years of operational experience running Envoy, or coming up on 3 years. And, if we were starting from scratch today, would I look at components of Istio? For sure. I mean, I would probably be using Pilot. Like if we were starting a new architecture on Kubernetes, I would very likely be looking at Pilot. I'd be looking at Istio Auth and other Istio components. But when you're dealing with a large legacy infrastructure with an app that is in heavy use, it's not so easy just to switch. So I think over time, we would like to figure out how to converge onto Istio, and that will eventually be using Istio Auth, most likely moving towards Pilot. But that's a long-term thing, and I honestly don't think that we're going to do that until we completely get off of our legacy VM infrastructure. Just because trying to backfill, the Kubernetes and the VMs into Istio, it just doesn't quite seem worth it. But once we turn down our legacy infrastructure, which I'm hoping will happen within 12 months, I think we'll be in a much better position to figure out whether it's time to start looking at a full Istio conversion.
Yeah. So, yeah, there was a question, and I was ready to do it, and then that answer just put me on my butt.
Okay, I have another question for you, and I will admit that this is a little bit of a planted question. But are you going to rebuild Envoy in Go++?
Yes. Absolutely. Once I, in my copious spare time, I develop the Go++ programming language, I will absolutely go do that.
Okay.
So, but that was something I'm actually curious on. Is that just shit posting, or is there code somewhere?
It's totally just shit posting.
Okay.
But I like it's shit posting that is not that hard either. So I am somewhat tempted to go off and just do it. But I just don't.
One bottle of tequila away.
Yeah, I just don't think that I will ever have the time. So in a world of infinite time, I would go off and do it, because I think that there's just a couple of features that could be added that would be really amazing. But I just don't see it happening.
So this is sort of your way of being like, hey, let's talk about what Go could be and not just hype what it is right now forever.
Yeah, I find our industry very amusing sometimes. I think that we as a group, we don't always look at the complete picture. I think especially in the cloud native space, we love to follow the hype. So
Yep.
I tend to be a slower paced engineer, just in the sense that I like to use tried and true technologies. So I think that sometimes we as an industry, we step backwards sometimes, and then we end up stepping forward later. So I think Go as a language has done some really fantastic things. I think there's some very frustrating things about it also. So I'm definitely looking forward to what they put together for Go 2.0.
Oh, totally. So talking a little bit about, to the people who are on this stream who are thinking like, I want to get into Istio, I want to get into Envoy, I've got a Kubernetes and I have more microservices than I know what to handle with and stuff. Like, what's your advice to those people that are like, I'm service mesh curious?
I tell people first to really understand what their problems are and what they're trying to get out of the system, because I think that the service mesh can do different things for different people. But this is somewhat related to what I was just saying in the answer to the previous question, which is that I think as an industry, sometimes we follow hype without fully understanding why we're doing it. And I think for an infrastructure component like service mesh or just microservices in general, I think sometimes we are pushing people to become practitioners when it might actually not be in their best interest. So as I say to people sometimes, if your monolith is working for you, you should probably stay on it. And I think that people have to ask hard questions about why are they doing microservices? What are the problems that they're having with their microservices? With that said, when companies reach a certain scale, and that's not necessarily traffic scale, that's also human scale, when people reach that scale, it is very likely that they will undergo a microservice transition. And when they do so, they will have very common problems around networking as well as observability. And at that point, again, I'm biased, but I think service mesh pattern can be very powerful. But my main pieces of advice, again, are to not underestimate how complicated it still is to get these systems working. It's not easy, no matter what any company wants to sell you out there. It's not going to be easy. We're still I would say in a very basic state from some of this cloud native technology. So I would be skeptical, and I'd really want to understand what you're trying to solve. And then I would figure out a very rigorous incremental rollout process. So, how are you going to roll out something like Istio or Envoy on a small portion of your non-critical infrastructure and test it and learn how to operate it?
Sure.
And then how are you going to shadow traffic between your legacy infrastructure and the service mesh architecture? And how are you going to measure if it's actually working? So SRE type best practices, but I think again that these technologies are complicated. They have lots of foot gun risk, and it's really important to understand what people are doing and be able to roll back.
Nice. What can you tell us about the Envoy open source contributor community right now? Is it growing?
It is. It continues to honestly completely blow me away. As I was saying before, when I look back, I think Istio was originally announced last May, I think. So it's been about a year and a quarter or something like that. And at that time, we had started to have really good traction with Envoy. Had some pretty big people starting to use it, but Istio was the first major announcement, and it's been great. They've been a fantastic partner. But now if you look at the overall Envoy, kind of developer and user community, it goes well beyond Istio.
Sure, absolutely.
I actually can think of very few large internet companies that are not using Envoy or about to use Envoy. If you look at the cloud providers, We have Microsoft already having an announcement that Envoy will be in their service mesh product. Google is obviously all in on Envoy. There's nothing been announced yet, but I can speculate that Amazon will follow. So, that will mean that Envoy is going to become really a primary part of all major cloud offerings. So if you look at the cloud, if you look at the products being built on Envoy, there's at least 10 or more startups now that are building their companies on Envoy. There's Istio. It's just the community continues to grow. So I've been spending a huge amount of my time trying to figure out how to do this process. And I think it's been interesting for Envoy because there isn't a single company that backs it. So, we don't have in-house PR folks, we don't have in-house marketing folks. It's
Sure.
It's all just GitHub and Twitter and
little
email
CNCF
lists.
on the side, and
yeah. So it's been fun for me to learn how to scale this community, how to get other maintainers, how to get maintainers who want to help other people. And it's been a huge amount of work. And I think sometimes people think that my life is super glamorous, but it's actually very, very hard work. So
Yeah.
I loved the very authentic tiara that you had made for, and when I saw that, I said, Spencer, where's my Istio tiara? Why are we not?
I'm sorry. I got cake. That's all I
here?
can do.
Absolutely get one.
Yeah.
I think we
get them on
need.
Etsy.
I think we need, but just quick question about the governance of Envoy, because you had just mentioned the CNCF. But is it part of a foundation, or are you the governance of Envoy?
So we are part of CNCF. We have a voting process among senior maintainers. I think we've done a good job of scaling the maintainers out to a group of people who generally see eye to eye. I can't actually recall any major argument that we've had. I think I'm probably still the de facto arbiter of design discussions, but I feel so confident and grateful with the maintainers that we've built that I'm actually about to take a month off starting tomorrow. Yay.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is the first time that I feel like I can just go away. My plan is I'm doing no work, no email for the next month, and I just don't have any concerns because I feel like we've built a really amazing community, that can keep things going.
Well, thank you for spending time with us on the day before your vacation. I know
Yeah,
how hectic
seriously.
that can be. So if people want to contribute, they go where?
Envoyproxy.io.
You guys
Great.
heard it here first.
Thank you so much for
Matt,
coming on the
thank
show,
you
Matt. We're going to take
so
a quick
much.
break. We'll be back with the folks from Aspen Mesh, and then we'll just keep this Istio hype train going all day.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Have a great vacation.
Thank you. Bye.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.